All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another React Wednesdays. My name is TJ Van Tol. I work as a developer advocate at Progress, and we've got a fun crew of people here to talk about Flipper today. With me, as always, Dan Wilson. Dan, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, I'm Dan Wilson, and I work with Digital Primates. We do enterprise React level services. We also curate the enterprise React newsletter. So if you're into enterprise React content, go ahead and Google it and subscribe. We never spam.
And Shannon, I know you work with Dan. You want to introduce yourself as well?
Hey, I'm Shannon Hicks. I actually work with a company called Lad2 Digital. We do just custom software development solutions, and I've been working with React Native for a good number of years now. And Dan invited me to just hop in and help bring the discussion along.
Awesome. And then with us today is Zain. And Zain, you're going to have to help me with your last name here.
Okay, so I'm Zain Sajjad, and I'm leading the team of front-end engineers here at Peekaboo Guru. So we are a places data company. We aggregate the locations data and display the structured data and supply data to different industries.
Cool. Well, so I know we want to talk about Flipper today, and I know Flipper is an entirely new thing for me. So could you just sort of explain what Flipper is, what problem it's trying to solve, how you got involved with it, all that good stuff?
Okay, so I guess it was a year back or less than that when React Native team started a thread on GitHub where they started asking that, what are your pains with React Native? So there were a number of things that developers came up with. One of the major was the debugging experience. There were a number of things in that debugging experience. You need to have a number of open source tools. You need to select, pick and choose from them and all that stuff. So the answer to that was the Facebook came up with a backing. Flipper was actually an open source package, an open source debugger, and that was backed by Facebook eventually. And so Flipper is a debugger basically for native mobile apps, and it serves as a platform over which you can develop different plugins to achieve different tasks. So what React Native team did was they embedded Flipper as a default debugger in React Native apps. So that allows developer to have a sort of an official debugger associated with your React Native app whenever you create one. So that allows developer to don't go around look out for different solutions to mix and match and create their own debugging experience. Above that, Flipper comes up with different built-in plugins that allows you to do different number of tasks. And beside that, you can also create your own plugin. So there are good guides available to create your own plugin. So I personally feel that this is the direction that's going to make React Native more powerful, as number of developers will be able to bring in more and more plugins, and that will make debugging more easier.
I've noticed in the marketing content for Flipper, they are very insistent on calling it a debugging platform. I think many people aren't necessarily used to what a debugging platform is. They're sort of used to a debugger.
Yeah.
I looked at the feature set for this. We'll dive into it. But in your mind, like, how significant is the fact that this is a platform, and what opportunities does this sort of expose?
See, I think this is the greatest beauty it has, because this is the most beautiful thing, because it allows a number of people to come in and contribute to it. At times when there are tools that don't allow other developers to build upon them, it's something that makes the growth of the platform slow. So I personally feel that developers will adopt and bring more and more plugins that will help a number of people out there.
It's funny too, Dan and I, so we have some background with NativeScript, so very similar from a technological point of view. And so we're very familiar with the challenges, I guess, of mobile debugging. And I think the thing we dealt with, and I'm curious if this is true in the React Native world as well, is that these platforms like React Native, they appeal largely to like React and web developers. And so people come in with the expectation of, oh, hey, this is going to be just as easy as developing for the web. And actually, like Native opens up so many more points of craziness, right? Like you really are building native apps. So I'm curious, and maybe this would be a good time. I know you wanted to just show the thing off visually. If you could just walk through like the feature set from a high level, because I know for me, like before I started getting into native stuff, my like the Chrome dev tools, the Firefox developer tools are like my only real like sort of basis for these things. So I guess maybe you could walk us through some of the things that Flipper does for you as a React Native developer.
Yeah, so I think let's start from this feature set. We can have a small demo here. There you go. Let's share my screen.
And while he's bringing it up, I'll mention for those of you in the chat too, if you have any questions about Flipper, just make sure to drop them in and I can run them by everybody here and we can chat around this stuff as well. So, and I see your screen now, so let me just add it in so everybody else can see it. So we should be good. And I see this tool. Is this something like, is there a certain command you have to run like from React Native to bring this up?
No, it's very basic React Native app that this you need to do React Native in it, and you're gonna get this app running, right? So I just added this IP here to get this a network inspector in that we'll discuss a little later. So let's start. Let's start from the very basic. One of the tasks with React Native was to reload the JavaScript. So there's an option that you go to simulator and you do Command R to, let's say you can press Command R to reload the code, right? What Flipper does is it allows you to reload it from here as well. So let's say you are working and looking at your network inspection and you just need to have see that all happen again, and you can reload it from here, top at director. Cool. So we were discussing that Flipper comes up with a few of the built-in plugins. The first of one is the layout inspector that allows you to inspect your native layout. So the thing you were discussing about React Native development, all of what you develop on JavaScript thread is basically translated into a proper UI node that's native. And there you see that welcome to React text here. And it's the reflection of this text here in your native layout inspector.
That's interesting. I see it's calling out the accessibility pane over there and sort of pulling out some of these labels. Can you talk about that as well?
Yeah, so it's on the native side that at times when you are debugging with the stuff, you don't know why your JavaScript isn't translating into the proper native node. This is where this comes in, and you can have change it from React Dev tool as well. But this is more towards debugging and looking at the native UI layer.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that it's giving the native UI versus like the actual React Native components, because like I think at least for me, not being an iOS expert, like it's tricky for me to look at things like UI window, RTC, all of these things as well. Yeah. Is there a way in this tool to view like the code you wrote in React, or is this like this layout specifically for the native stuff?
So you can also have this React Dev tool available here. Right? So you can have this text here. So this is the React implementation, and that's your completely React app coming down all React nodes. And with this Dev tool, actually, you can edit that right away as well. See this? You can make edits here. You can edit the style here as well. Just this color.
This is actually kind of slick because it's kind of best of both worlds, because you're seeing and I'm assuming then you could head back to the layout view and do the same sort of thing, but just looking at native elements.
Yeah, so you cannot edit things from here. You cannot change things on the native side, but that's more of just an inspector, not the fully, editable thing. So when you want to edit or see live changes, you need to have do that in React DevTools actually.
That makes sense. If you were going to start editing things in the layout tab, I was going to lose my mind because just knowing what we had to go through with native script, it's kind of nuts. This is pretty cool though.
Yeah, the thing I always had trouble with mobile development was styling. The styling for me is so iterative, and anything that requires reloading the app or recompiling the app, it breaks me right out of my flow. So I see some tools in here that would help speed up and take some of the friction out of the styling and kind of runtime experience.
Yeah, and I'm thinking in a way that most of the React Native developers are coming in from the web development background. So all of these awesome developer tooling is already available in the browsers. So number of them are quite used to of doing this in the browsers, and when we don't find this here in mobile platforms, it becomes really challenging for us to keep up the pace.
Yeah, and just to kind of level set with the folks at home, so to speak, this is a desktop application, right?
Yeah.
And somehow you've connected it into an emulation device.
Yeah.
Is that an easy thing to do?
So this is the default behavior that React Native comes up with. So you don't have to do anything. You just need to run the command React Native init. You will create your new application, and everything is already set up there.
Yeah, we got another. Oh man, what? At some point, I'd like me pronouncing Twitch names is the worst, but G Humiston, definitely, I'm in agreement. I'm also like the way that those can live side by side is actually really, really slick.
That's Greg from our team.
Oh, Greg.
With us. He's pretty sharp guy.
Is there a JavaScript console debugger built into this as well?
Okay, so console is there. You can have all your logs there.
Okay.
So you can just move them to debug, just like you do in the browsers. You can have info level debugging of warrants. If you just want to look at errors only, you can have them. Just like we do with the console, actually, the browser console.
Does it grab like native logs as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can have native logs in a sense that it has the crash reporter. So if your app is crashing somewhere, so that can bring up here as well, but not that actual native device logs.
Okay. And like JavaScript like step debugging, is that something built into this, or do you need to use something else?
No, that step debugging is not there as of now, but there are other features, and that's not here right now.
Okay.
Step debugging is a hard feature to implement.
Yeah.
But you can do that in React Native somehow, right? Like there's ways of doing it, or is there not a way of doing that right now?
I haven't done it right now. I don't know if there is a way, but
okay.
I have personally never done that.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I know I use the tried and true console log instead of step debugging.
Yeah, it's amazing how much farther we can all get in life, just console logging everything.
Yeah.
That's the best debugging technique, I guess. Easier. So and another good thing is that you can inspect all of your network calls here. So since we are having a very simple app running, I just added this API that brings in my public IP. So here you can have a look here. I wish I can clear this. Okay. So this is all clear, and just refresh the app. See this. Now this is what my API request is, and all the details of my API request are available here. So you can monitor all of the API request, including images. We haven't included any image here, but if there is any image, that will also appear here. So you can have just filter it out here. There are some index calls as well, but you can always, for example, and I can see all this details here.
Yeah, I always felt like the network pieces were always the big mystery, because you just, they're buyer. Maybe it comes back, maybe it doesn't. If it does, you get something, maybe you don't. So this seems like a nice way to kind of capture those and and record what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna agree with Greg. I'm gonna agree with him one more time. Just having the crash reporter is nice because I remember doing that in native script too, of like having to jump. Like, is this a JavaScript error or is this a native error? And like having a centralized place for this is really nice.
Oh, that's a good point.
And Ben Bash Official says that you can have an instance of the Chrome DevTools to set breakpoints, but it isn't as quick and intuitive as web development. Which is, I mean, I've tinkered in React Native before, but I seem to remember it being possible, but just not like as seamless as you want it to be. But I could be remembering wrong.
But hey, Flipper's a plugin. It's a platform. Build it up. Let's go, people.
Yeah.
How hard can it be?
But people are developing. I mean, I was looking at the number of plugins that have come up since I last went through the list. There are good plugins that are coming up. And I feel that's going to lead to something good.
Yeah, that's the wisdom, like you mentioned earlier, of building this as a platform, is that, you know, the market can the developers can kind of decide what's useful for them. And, you know, it's sort of the ethos of React as well. So that makes sense. This is interesting.
Yeah, actually, I see. Go ahead, Shannon.
Yeah, is there some sort of like gold standard repository of Flipper plugins so that we can like browse through and be like, oh, I didn't know I needed that until I found out it existed.
Okay, so it is there. You can have this manage plugin thing, and you'll have this install plugin, and it will load all of the plugins that are.
Oh, fancy.
Very nice.
And it'll also tell you the status of the plugins that are working and that are not working. So let's say this plugin section is somehow failing, and you can have, just know what the hell is going on with it.
Are there any plugins like what's an example of one that you found useful or that you use?
I was working with React Native Performance a few days back. That's super awesome. I was just unable to pull that for this project, but the React Native Performance thing is really great. That allows you to have a look at what are the app startup time for your application, and how much time it takes on the native thread, how much time does your JavaScript takes to load. So if you're working on the startup time of your application, that is something that's going to help you a lot.
And we got a question from Ben Bash. Does the network inspector track any request in the app, or do you need any setup to get it work with your configuration?
No, there is no setup required for Network Inspector. These three plugins, that's Layout, Network Inspector, and Shared Preferences View. All of these three are available right away by default in Flipper. And whenever you will create a new React Native app, they will be available right away. So you don't have to do anything with that.
What version of React Native brought the Flipper support? Was it 61?
It's after 62.
62? Okay.
Yeah.
And is this a Facebook? This is a Facebook official. Like, is it Facebook that's maintaining this? Is this a community project?
It's an open source, but yeah, it is backed by Flipper, backed by Facebook.
Okay.
So there's one more great feature that I just wanted to show. You can see this orange bar here giving me warning. Doctor has discovered problem with your iOS setup. If you are not interested in iOS development, you can disable settings, right? So at times, one of the key problem with React Native was that people, used to face problems with installing different native stuff. For example, your Android SDK is not installed, your X tool for iOS is not installed, or whatever. So
yes, Dan has nightmares about this still to this day. Like,
I really do.
He just wakes up at 2 a.m. and like his dreams of console errors about people with some weird misconfigured Android SDK.
I look under my bed and it's a Cocoa Pod gone wild.
Right. So what Flutter did for this was something amazing. Flutter came up with an idea of Flutter Doctor. That was a command that you run, and it will tell you, see, these are the problems with your environment that you want to sort out. So React Native also come up with that React Native Doctor thing, and that React Native Doctor is actually integrated with Flutter as well. So you see this. It's a Doctor. It says OpenSSL should be installed, and it is installed. So that's checked. Watchman should be installed. If it's not installed, it will have a complete guide here to tell you how to install it, right? So Android SDK is installed and it has the details here. So my iOS setup is not working very well because IDB is not installed. So IDB is required to use Flutter with iOS devices. It can be installed this way. So you can have all the information available about the issue you are facing. And once it is fixed, you can just rerun this check and it will check if everything is fine. If everything is fine, yeah, this error will go away.
Nice.
Have a question from Ashik Paul, I believe. Not sure I totally understand the question. Is it possible to create the SDK with Expo? Maybe it means like, can you run this with like Expo-based apps or not? Do you know?
I guess that would be available, but I haven't tested it with Expo yet. So I'm not 100% sure, but Expo has a great team. So I personally feel it's been a long time since Flipper came out with React Native. I think that there should be support there right now.
Okay.
Cool. So one more feature before we stop this live demo is, you can screenshot your emulator from here right away. And that's going to have this screenshot. Right, and also you can create the video, so you can start recording your changes and all that stuff, and then you can stop and you have a proper video file working,
which you then can hand to the designer and say, hey, this design that you made doesn't work under this condition, and instead of me trying to write 3 pages worth of tickets, here's a 15-second video.
Yeah, it's even good for quality assurance team if they want to share the steps to reproduce certain bug and
bugs. I don't write software with bugs in it.
It's funny because
they just show up.
I mean, I actually now I'm deeply curious like how they did this, because the number of times like just working on NativeScript for years, I'd take so many screen captures of phones. Right. And like the screenshots is built in. Those are pretty easy with the emulators. But the number of times I had to like take QuickTime and put it over just the screen part of it. And then like, the iPhone had the notch. So now you're like, oh God, now what am I going to do? Right. To get the video. So just a small thing like that is nice. Like if you just want to show people I'm hitting some bug or some piece of functionality, it's a nice little handy thing.
And this really helps in many ways. I mean, it's not just about reproduction of the bugs or thing. It helps you have you just need to have a demo of certain features. You cannot share the code or you cannot share the build. You can just have this video available. So these are some great features that are available with Flipper. But obviously this list is ever growing. Things will keep on coming and. People will keep on adding. There is one feature that's not used pretty much with many of the React Native apps, but there is thing shared preferences. I mean, native developers must have known it for many times. They use it for different things. We have async storage in React Native, but at times there are scenarios where we use shared preferences. That's the native storage. For native permanent storage. So you can also have all your shared preference values available here. And you can have, for example, there is enable minification. You can just check it and reload. And that's going to bring up a minified bundle from here. So it's again rebuilding the bundle. So this is something that shared preferences are usually used for storing user authorization tokens and stuff.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Having not done a lot with React, so is this more or less kind of like almost like local storagey type stuff, or?
Yeah, that's kind of similar to that.
Okay.
I thought on a previous tab I noticed an expression watcher, or maybe it was in the logs. Have you used that much?
That's expression log. That's in network part here.
Maybe it was in the logs tab on the left.
This one.
Yeah, over there on the right. That looks like you can either filter the logs or maybe if it was step debugging, you could like break at that point. I don't know what that's used for, but it looks interesting.
Yeah, let's look. I haven't used it much. I don't know if
like how many times it's come up.
Yeah, it looks like
we can
exactly.
have it here, and you can just let's try it out here. So you can,
let's check it out. If you have a nice chatty log file, I'm sure that's heaps of fun to go scrolling through.
It is. Just log the IP here and see if that shows up. Yeah. Yeah. So
wow, look at there.
Mounting it here, right. So you can have it over here, and see this. This IP is coming up here. So the number of times the IP has appeared, I can just clear logs and do it again. And so IP itself is coming 5 times here. Yes. Wow, that's perfect.
That's a pretty helpful feature.
Yeah.
The note, I was wondering too, that must be what the notifications is, because I was wondering what the heck this tool would need to notify you about. Oh, maybe this is something different.
Yeah, so it's that certain plugins are not working, they'll stop working.
Okay.
Ben Bash is super happy.
Yeah, tracing logs in Xcode is the worst. Yeah, there's a lot about Xcode that's the worst. So
that's actually, there's a lot that's bad about development.
I'm curious. So top right corner, there's a thing that looks like almost like a target thing. The one to the left there is there that like almost like an inspect. So not the doctor, but the one right to the left of that.
This one?
To the left of doctor.
Okay. Yeah, just that. Yeah.
Oh, that's the settings. So it's a weird icon for settings. Okay.
Yeah.
Never mind then. I was wondering if you could get the, like in Chrome DevTools, right? There's like the inspect button where you do that and then it takes you right to the spot in the layout where you're at. I was wondering if something like that was available.
Yeah, that is available. I guess it's the. Okay, so
I'm pretty impressed so far with this. It looks, and I'm sure there's even more plugins, but I can see how this would take someone way to the end of their project faster than all these console logging statements.
I don't know why my mouse is not working. Cursor is not working on this. Yeah, we can try rebuilding.
Is this is Facebook, like, is this been maintained? Like, are you actively seeing new things shipping, active like development being done on this?
Yeah, there is active development being done. If you look at the FP Flipper GitHub repo, they're working with it all the time. So they're working quite actively on that. So I think this is good. And the last commit is, I guess, 4 hours ago.
Oh,
so it's not being updated, huh?
Yeah,
it's abandonware. 4 hours. Get out of here.
I feel like the next version that Flipper needs is an internal updater. Downloading the whole application and replacing it and reauthorizing it with macOS is getting a little old.
Oh, does it like prompt you for the like permissions to install every time, or
it's not, it doesn't have one of those official Apple signatures.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least not at this point in time. I assume that they'll get around to it soon.
Yeah. And is this it looks like this is just a tool for, would this work with just native iOS and Android apps? Like, does this have to be React apps or React Native apps?
No, this works with React Native apps only. So
it is React Native apps only. Okay.
Yeah. So Flipper in itself works for native applications as well, but React Native has added the support. So I have personally used it React Native only. I haven't given it a try with any other native platform.
Okay. Well, next week we have Kiki from Microsoft, who's working on she's a program manager for the React Native for Windows and Mac OS platforms. And so it'll be interesting to see if Flipper is already usable on that and what those native UIs look like. So that's one thing I've never done is build a desktop app, especially not natively. Imagine since it's a Facebook project and it's React Native, it should be able to work, but should is a big word, and not always, things don't always work like they should.
Yeah.
So Lukey the TNT says can also be used for native apps. So
there you go.
Very cool. Yeah, because I always found when working with NativeScript, the native tools, and granted I was no expert, right, but like the native like built-in Xcode and Android Studio tools confused me way more than they helped me. So I don't know have you tried using any of those before? Is there anything like built into Xcode and Android Studio that you find useful? They're like things that you could potentially see coming to Flipper.
I think Android's part of Locket thing is pretty good. The native logging part, I think that can bring in some good insights to Flipper as well. If we can just mimic that Locket behavior of Android Studio, that's super.
Yeah, I remember Xcode had a pretty decent thing for doing memory management. At least that's remember. I would write bad apps that would use up tons of memory, so I needed some way of looking into it. So I just remember that they were available.
It looked like there was a profiler tab in Flipper.
Okay.
Yeah, that's actually React DevTool profiler. So you can have you can profile you can use the same profiler of React DevTool that's available in the Chrome to profile your React application actually.
Because I think that's really the biggest learning curve for web developers that come over is that they naturally assume that all machines have 32 gigs of RAM and they can do whatever they want. And it's not
it's
the truth.
It's a native app. There are no performance problems in native apps, Dan. That's how it works. That's why you build a native app.
Just making a note of that.
Yeah.
So, for the web developer who comes over, we have all these tools that make them feel comfortable, but they also have to learn the mobile device environment and the restrictions and the constraints. And writing a good mobile app is not easy.
Shannon, I'm curious, is Flipper something you use in your day-to-day, or are there any other like debugging tools, practices, other things you'd recommend?
We're just starting to be able to use Flipper. We have a bunch of applications that the code base is a bit older, and we adopted React Native and React Navigation as the navigation library for our React Native apps a while back. And once the React Native .60 came out, that sort of pigeonholed us into not being able to use the latest and greatest. We just didn't have the time to go back and refactor apps to support that. It had enough breaking changes,
Yeah.
So just recently we've had some extra time, and I've been able to start bringing those apps up forward to actually up-to-date versions of React Native and React Navigation. And it just the first time I ran the app and I saw all this code referencing Flipper and stuff, I was like, what's this Flipper thing? And I Googled it and I downloaded it and I was like, wait a minute, where did all this come from? This is awesome.
Well, that's an interesting spot to be at, because I think, we all tend to think everyone's on the latest and greatest, but actually nobody is. They're all dealing with decisions that were made yesterday and last year and 2 years ago. What advice would you give to people that are either not able to migrate right now to 62 or are planning a 62 migration? Is there anything that comes to mind you think people should know about?
I don't think that there's any advice I can give as far as actually making that jump. I will say that with React Native .60 and newer, the upgrade process has gotten so much smoother. So I started the migration of one of our apps when React Native 62 was the latest, and like 2 weeks into it, React Native 63 came out, and I was like, well, I'm not going to like declare this done when I'm already outdated before I finished. So I went through the upgrade process, and there's this wonderful tool that React Native community supports that shows you like the actual code differences in between different versions. You can pick what version your app is at now, and what version you're trying to migrate to, and they like go through line by line, file by file. These are the lines of code that are different in like the core of React Native and also the JavaScript side of things. And
Wow, that gives me
they just make it
goosebumps.
so they just make it so easy now to do that transition. And now that with React Native 60 and later, with the native packages no longer needing to be linked like at the code level when you install it, instead it's linked basically at runtime. Oh man, that simplified so much stuff. Now my Objective-C files are just almost stock Facebook React Native files at this point in time. So upgrading to the latest stuff is just so easy.
Oh, that's good to know.
So I just wanted to add one thing here. Beside Flipper, there was an awesome tool, React Native Debugger, and that was also an open source tool, and that had all these integration of Chrome DevTool for your React Native apps. But again, that was a remote debugging thing. It also had that Redux integration and async storage. You can log your async storage. You can have logs. You can inspect into network calls. You can have console. You can also have a Redux dev tool running side by side. So that's pretty good debugging tool for people who are using React Native below 62. And I have shared a link here. I wrote it some few days back about it, and what good things that React Native debugger has.
So looking at the TNT in chat has said that Flipper has a lot of potential. It's already nice, but it needs to mature. The setup is not straightforward, and some important features are missing, and you have to make some compromises. I'm curious. I've asked to clarify a little bit in the chat, but I'm curious, like, what are the sort of limitations that you see in the tool right now? I know we talked about the setup a little bit with like Mac having you to go through the permissions and such, but is there like, what do you see as missing from the tool right now?
I'm not sure that I would say that there's too much missing. I think that my expectation of a tool that's so new that like this is just the beginning. And as now that it's part of the default like React Native app that gets created when you start a new React Native project, I see more and more people just supporting it and building plugins, and plugins potentially being included as defaults as it matures. I will say that when we were looking at Flipper a little bit earlier, and we were looking at the doctor, there was that last piece of software that's like, hey, configure this if you want to be able to use
thing.
real physical devices. I will say that the install process for that is not simple.
Well, to be fair, like 4 or 5 years ago when I started picking up NativeScript, I think cross-platform mobile development was in a very different place, and a lot has changed since then. And it's really worth saying that 3 times so people don't get the wrong impression. But I remember setting up NativeScript, and I had to set up emulators and all these NPM packages and all these paths, and it's like 4 hours of installing and configuring and cave diving and looking at logs to try to get up and running simply. And I don't know how long it took to get Flipper up and running, but the fact that it's sort of baked in from Create React App seems like it has a bit of an advantage. What's the time investment required to set up a Flipper instance the way you have it, Zain?
So when you're upgrading, it takes a bit of time. You need to check what are the different diff actually is between the versions that you are using and into the version you are upgrading to. But if you are creating a fresh React Native app, you don't need to have anything. I mean, that doesn't require any extra setup. So
Because
we can do it live right now as well. I mean, that's, that's something that I can just do that. We can do that on share screen.
nice. Well, that's pretty helpful.
Basically, you just download the app from GitHub, the latest GitHub release. You convince macOS that it's safe to run. And once you do that, when you open it, it will just automatically connect to your React Native 62 or 63 app, and basically all those features that we saw just a bit ago, those are all just there by default.
It is cool, Dan. I was thinking this the whole time too, thinking back years ago of the manual process. And like you said, it's changed a whole lot, because like 4 or 5 years ago, we were just happy. It's like we'd show demos where we'd like JavaScript put that text on that iOS app, and it was cool, right? And like nowadays to see the like starting point is like you have to have this platform for native that has a tool chain that can compete with what we have on the web, even though it's operating in a completely like native bytecode. I mean, I'm actually fascinated with some of like the engineering work that comes into this, because like tapping into, are all those things you were showing earlier, so things like screenshots, are all those cross-platform as well? Will they work on Android also?
Yeah, that works perfectly fine on Android as well.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts, just because knowing like what we had to do with NativeScript, diving into like that and doing it for both platforms and different, like all like Android, especially the emulator world is chaos, and getting all of that to work is actually, it's really impressive. It's not like for the browser, where the browser dev tools are like still powerful, but they're using like one sort of consistent set of like JavaScript is JavaScript. And in native world, you're essentially doing double the work under the hood for every button you're putting on the screen.
Going back to the requirements here, didn't 62 come out earlier this year, like maybe 6 months ago, something like that?
Sounds about right.
I think when I did my research on Flipper, though, it predates 62 by quite a while. I thought I saw tweets from the project a couple of years ago. I'm curious if you know the history of the project and what it was intended for. And, was it always intended to be the React Native debugging instance, or was it a separate project that they sort of pulled into the ecosystem?
That was actually, I guess, available for native mobile apps. As far as I remember, it was available earlier, and then the Facebook's backing came in, and they, adopted it for React Native as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you're one of the wealthiest companies on the planet, if you want a great tool for debugging, you're going to get one. They're gracious enough to share their toys, so I admire them for that. They don't have to do that.
Yeah.
Well, Zain, Shannon, are there any topics on here that we haven't covered that we want to dive into? And I'll also throw that out to chat as well. If there's anything you want to talk about, we have some people pretty knowledgeable here about React Native and React Native debugging. So if there's anything you want to see a demo of, or questions or things you've ran into your projects, go ahead and throw them out there. But I guess I'll toss it to you guys first. Is there any topics here we haven't covered yet?
So I'd just like to mention one thing that had to be mentioned earlier in the start, but I just somehow I missed it. In the presence of React Native debugger and all the Chrome DevTool debugging available already with the React Native from the day one, how significant is Flipper? I mean, Flipper is not the first debugging experience for React Native apps. So there were debugging experiences present earlier as well. The point with the earlier debugging was that you had to do a remote debugging. By remote debugging, we mean your JavaScript was executed on Chrome as well. It was not just executed on your mobile devices, it was executed on Chrome as well. So there were certain issues that popped up when you are inspecting your application on Chrome, and they were actually running very fine on your device, or other way around. Things were working fine on my device. Things don't work fine on my device, but they work fine when I inspect my application in Chrome. So that was actually the difference between the JavaScript engines. I mean, React Native used to run on the WebKit JSC JavaScript core, and Chrome used to have a V8 engine. So the things that were working on V8 were not working on JSC. and that was something missing piece in the puzzle for the debugging. With Flipper, that's not happening.
No.
With Flipper, whatever is happening is actually happening on your emulator. So you are not doing a remote debugging. Actually, you are doing a native debugging. Whatever is happening is happening in the real. So you don't have to think in a way that this might be working on the browser, or what if I build this app into release build and then that doesn't work. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, if you listen, you can hear the silence of the heads not banging on the desk. How much fun would that be to be like, my code works fine when I inspect it, doesn't work fine when someone runs it. It works on my machine, Just keep playing that card.
Yeah, so that's not gonna happen now.
Sorry, we've got a question from Greg too that's about plugins. Do you know what is possible for a plugin for Flipper? So could you build a plugin that could say color the component tree, for probably different colors for different types of nodes or that sort of thing? Just in general, do you know have you ever played with Flipper plugin development? Do you know what you can and can't do?
I think this particular thing about sorry. So I think this particular thing about changing the devs on React Dev Tool, I think that's going to be very challenging task because React Dev Tool in itself is a plugin, and changing a plugin via plugin, I don't know how that's gonna work out. But I haven't played with developing much of a plugin for Flipper, but I have seen the guide that's available, and that's pretty good, I think.
What do you have access to as a plugin developer? What do you plug into? Is it just the runtime of React Native and you just grab whatever you want? Is there sort of a set of APIs that you can access? I appreciate that you maybe haven't developed a bunch of plugins, but any information you have about how it works would be cool.
Yeah, Card 16 actually says that the plugins themselves, at least the ones you view in your apps, are actually React apps, which is kind of very meta and kind of fun.
That helps.
So I haven't tried with developing the plugin, so I don't have much of idea what sort of APIs are available. But this is something that I'm always interested in and will be trying in next few weeks.
Yeah, I looked from the plugin list that there was this all kind of functionality that people can make. So I imagine whatever they've put together, it's kind of up to you to make something cool with it if you want. And if it's React and you're a React Native developer, that should be very, very familiar. So, whether it's easy or hard, they've made it pretty easy given what can be done. What functionality do you find Flipper lacks? If you could wave a magic wand and have it do one thing it doesn't do now, what would it be?
Oh, nice question. I would have a very nice Redux debugger integration with it. The current solutions are not very much into the performance and covers all the thing that Redux does. So another thing that I would like to have a multiple view. I mean, you can view network tab. How I work with React applications on web is mostly that you need to have a look at your Redux debugger, your network layer, and your layout inspector all together. So with React Native debugger, that's very much possible that you can have all of these in single window. So, but with Flipper, that's not the case. So I wish if that can come up and we can have all these 3 or 4 pieces right away in a window.
And you got agreement in the chat.
Yeah.
As well.
What about you, Shannon?
I don't know if it exists or not, so I wouldn't be terribly surprised if I just heard, oh yeah, we can do that. I would love to see network conditioning. One of my biggest pain points in our apps is when someone is out in the field, sometimes potentially literally, like in the middle of a cornfield or something, and connectivity isn't all that great. We have unexpected behaviors that you would never see running in the simulator or whatnot. And I know there's things that people do to try to simulate that, but something more built into React Native or into Flipper or both would be awesome.
You know, I did some contracting work with T-Mobile for a few years, and we were working on the 3G rollout in the northeast of the U.S. And, you know, everybody thinks of, oh, drop calls, the network sucks, right? But T-Mobile took drop calls very, very seriously. If there was a dropped call, there was a whole flurry of activity, and a technician was dispatched to go try to figure out what the reason was. And it could be plenty of non-network related reasons, but they tracked everything. And the things that go into cellular networks, I mean, it's a lot of things swirling around. So I see your point, and good luck trying to debug cornfield network problems. I don't know if corn LTE is a thing, but hopefully it is, and it works well for you.
Actually, I do have one last question. How does this work? Like, is there a way of doing like iOS and Android simultaneously? Like, what happens if you're running an iOS app and an Android app? Like, is it smart enough is it connecting to like one simulator at a time? Can you like open up multiple instances? How does all that work?
I tried doing this an hour ago in between the projects actually, and I was not successful.
Okay.
So one at a time.
I don't know if that's going to work out somehow, but I wasn't able to do that today at least.
It makes sense because it like actually like the more I think about it, like trying to do that would be weird, right? Because I don't like there's only one state of the app itself. Like I don't know, maybe it could be smart enough to like give you multiple, I don't know, tabs or something. It's just an idea in my head because I know like the reason that made me think of this is a lot of times when I do mobile dev, I would have an Android emulator and an iOS simulator up at the same time because I wanted to make sure, you know, cross-platform stuff, right? I'm not like wildly breaking one or the other. So sounds like at the moment, at least, I just pick one to have the debugger attached to, and then if I needed to, I just sort of switch it up as needed.
Yeah, I mean, you need a lot of RAM for this as well.
Yes.
Running both the simulators all together, and that's going to eat up a lot.
Yep.
And also, you need to run Chrome with that. So.
Yeah, I have daily Chrome fights, so you know I don't know why 92 tabs takes up 10 gigs of RAM, but it does.
Switch to Firefox, man. I'm on Team Firefox.
You're the third person that's told me that. In fact, because my memory is so hazy, you might have been the same person that told me 3 times, but I'm gonna go look at it now.
starting the revolution.
Yeah, the one-man promo gig for Firefox. So hopefully they send you your royalty checks.
Yeah. The Firefox branded boat that I got is pulling in here. So
nice.
Hi guys, we're coming up on our time here. Is there anything else that we should cover? Any last questions chat has? Any of you guys have that we want to discuss before we wrap up here today? I think this has been pretty awesome.
It's been really good.
I came in, all I knew about Flipper coming in was like the 2-line description of what it was. So I'm actually impressed with the breadth of what is possible. It actually looks pretty slick.
That's good.
Cool.
Well, if there's anything personally you want to plug, go for that.
Yeah, if anybody has any other questions for you guys later on, where's a good place to follow you, sort of deal?
You can catch me on Twitter. I just add my Twitter handle to the name. It's John Treatise.
Awesome.
Yep. And then my Twitter handle is also on the name. I do have a service that I would love to plug. Latitude Digital, we built a social distancing tool called Join Our Line. Basically, it allows a business to have people like join a virtual line instead of like, pieces of tape on the sidewalk in front of your store. So that people can wait in their cars, say if it's, not perfect weather, things like that. It's a really great little tool we threw together to solve a problem for a couple local businesses in Colorado, and we think it's really useful. It's free for a lot of businesses, like single location businesses, charities, things like that. You can just go to joinourline.com and there's a link that'll take you to a video and walk you through the whole thing.
Nice. What
Is
is
it
the app built in?
I was gonna say, is it a React Native app?
No, it's actually it's web based, so it's React. But I mean, the whole idea was like, we don't make people create logins or things like that. It's just like, we want people to be able to anonymously join a line. You know, there's no marketing involved in it or anything like that.
Ooh,
It's
more marketing.
Yeah.
I tell you, I've been conditioned to not want to create accounts places. I really have. I went to an independent web store the other day and they had great products at a great price. And then when I had to check out and it said create an account, my energy level went, and I'm sure I'm just a flawed human being that needs better behavior. But the fact that you guys built that with the end user in mind, and also at a very key time where businesses need things like that, hats off to you. We'll make sure and put a link to it somewhere where people can find it.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
Cool. Dan, you got your plug you want to give?
Yeah, we once again, Digital Primates curates the Enterprise React newsletter. If you're into that kind of thing, Google it and subscribe. We do not spam. We won't sell your email, and we're pretty nice people.
Cool. And my very last plug here is first of all, thanks everybody for joining us today. If you enjoyed this, you can subscribe to us or follow us on Twitch to get notified of any of these events when they come up. We do a lot of these streams with progress. If you're interested in React Wednesday specifically, we have a fancy new website that I'll drop in chat, which is you can learn about our upcoming shows. You can add them to your calendars. Come hang out with us. It's a fun time. We try to bring in pretty cool people like these guys from the React space to ask some questions and such. So hop back in every Wednesday at the same time. And thanks, guys. Especially thanks, Zain, for stopping by late night. It's getting pretty late for you, so I'll let you get to it.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you for having me.
See you, everyone.